ready to ditch the daily grind, escape to a time before deadlines, traffic, even 9 to 5 jobs. Our deep dive today takes us way back to the hunter-gatherers, our ancestors who lived for millennia without, well, all the comforts and complications of modern life.
It's fascinating. By exploring their world, we're actually not just digging into the past, but we're kind of uncovering hidden truths about ourselves, like our instincts, our social behaviors, even maybe that urge to binge-watch TV with a whole tub of ice cream.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that. I gotta admit, though, my mental image of the Stone Age is maybe a little too influenced by cartoons. Everyone's running around in loincloths, chasing woolly mammoths.
Huh. The trap of pop culture, right? And even the term Stone Age can be misleading. It's based only on the tools and artifacts that actually survived, not necessarily the materials that, truly define their lives. Imagine if someone tried to understand our world just from the scraps of metal and plastic we leave behind.
Like judging a book by its super tattered cover. There's a whole story inside, but you're only getting like a tiny glimpse.
And a biased one too, right? Think about it. What survives the test of time? The durable stuff like stone and bone,
Right.
but all that wood, the plant fibers, even intricate textiles, those probably played huge roles in their everyday lives, but poof, vanished. So we're left with this skewed picture to try and decipher.
So how do we reconcile all those missing pieces with what we do know? Were our hunter-gatherer ancestors living in these like egalitarian communes, sharing everything from food to, well, partners?
Ah, yes, the great ancient commune debate. It's a question that has fueled, I don't know how many academic debates. Were they paragons of peace and equality? Or were they driven by those same, primal instincts as us modern folks?
I gotta admit, the idea of collective fatherhood is kind of mind-blowing.
It really challenges our modern ideas of family, doesn't it? The Bari people of South America, for example, they believe a child's parentage isn't limited to just one father. It's a culmination of the mother's relationship, so you get children with diverse strengths and traits.
So instead of it takes a village, it's more like it takes a really open-minded community.
Exactly. It shows just how incredible the diversity of human social structures has been through our history, right? Reminds us that what we consider natural or normal is often just shaped by our own cultural, lens.
But weren't there also hunter-gatherer societies with more, I don't know, defined family units? I mean, possessiveness and jealousy just seem, I don't know, pretty hardwired into human nature.
There's the other side of the debate. Some researchers argue that monogamy, or at least, more exclusive partnerships, they were probably present. Even prevalent, maybe, in a lot of hunter-gatherer societies. They point to things like preferential treatment of certain children within groups, suggesting this deeper biological drive to protect and pass down one's lineage.
So we're kind of left with this prehistoric puzzle then. How do we reconcile these seemingly contradictory ideas?
It's a bit like piecing together, I don't know, a shredded document. We've got these fragments of information, archaeological finds, studies of modern hunter-gatherer societies, but that full picture is still so elusive. But it's in those gaps, in that space between certainty and speculation, that's where those aha moments, they often pop up.
Speaking of aha moments, I'm super curious about what a typical day looked like for a hunter-gatherer. I imagine it was a far cry from our morning commute and, endless emails.
Forget the daily grind. Picture this. You wake up with the sunrise, right? And you're surrounded by this vast wilderness, totally teeming with life. Your office is a sprawling forest. Your to-do list is dictated by nature's rhythms.
Okay, so no coffee breaks or Zoom meetings, but probably a healthy dose of, will I be the one on the menu today? Anxiety, yeah.
Right, let's not get too romanticized. But in all seriousness, their lives were this delicate dance between, resourcefulness and risk. They had to possess this unparalleled knowledge of their environment. Imagine having to ID edible plants, track animals, predict weather patterns, all without smartphones or, Google Maps.
And don't forget their craftsmanship, that spearhead you mentioned earlier, the skill, the precision to make something like that. It's mind-blowing.
They were the original multitaskers, the ultimate generalists in a world that, let's face it, increasingly demands, like hyper-specialization. We might have our fancy gadgets, but honestly, could we survive, let alone thrive, with only their knowledge and skills?
I'm going to go with a hard no on that one. I can barely keep a houseplant alive, let alone forage for my next meal.
Which brings us to an interesting point. Did this constant need to survive, right? Did it mean that they worked longer hours than us?
I'd imagine so, right? I mean, their work was literally life or death, not just like meeting some deadlines.
It's a common assumption.
Yeah.
But you might be surprised. Studies of modern hunter-gatherers, like the Sand People of the Kalahari Desert, suggest they might have actually worked fewer hours than a lot of us today.
Wait, seriously, fewer hours. And here I thought my 40-hour work week was rough. Tell me more.
Well, they were found to spend, on average, only like 35, 45 hours per week on essential tasks, like gathering food, maintaining tools, that sort of thing. That leaves a lot of time for, socializing, storytelling, pursuing other interests.
Wow. Talk about a different pace of life. But if they had that much downtime, how did they avoid, well, snacking themselves out of existence? I mean, I get the munchies just thinking about it.
Okay, so that's where things get really interesting. Ever heard of the gorging gene theory?
Oh, is this the one that explains my uncanny ability to demolish an entire bag of chips in one sitting?
You might be onto something. The gorging gene theory, basically, it suggests that our brains are still like hardwired for a world where calorie-rich food, it was scarce, it was precious.
So it's like our ancestors are whispering to us, eat it all now. You never know when the next feast will be.
Exactly. In a world of feast or famine, this instinct to, overeat when you found high-calorie foods, crucial for survival. But in today's world of 24/7 access to processed foods, well, you see the dilemma.
It's like our ancient wiring is like short-circuiting in a way. So those cravings I get, that's just my inner hunter-gatherer trying to survive in this world of like supermarkets and vending machines.
Fascinating. But before I reach for another snack, let's delve a little deeper into the realities of their world. It couldn't have all been leisure time and, just endless resources, right?
You're right. While it's tempting to romanticize that hunter-gatherer lifestyle, the truth is their existence was also full of challenges, dangers, and even moral complexities that honestly might shock us today.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into the darker side of this story.
It makes you think, right? A world without hospitals, without any safety nets, really. Infant mortality rates, tragically high. Predators, well, they were lurking everywhere. And even the smallest injury, it could turn fatal so quickly. It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? Just how much we take for granted. But it wasn't just the elements and wild animals they had to deal with, was it? What about conflict within their own groups? Or even with other, tribes?
That's the question that's always fascinated anthropologists, hasn't it? Were hunter-gatherers just naturally peaceful, living in this perfect harmony with, each other and nature? Or were they just as prone to violence and territoriality as, well, as we see throughout history? And the evidence, just like so much about their lives, it's open to interpretation.
So no prehistoric police reports to dig up then. I mean, what clues do we have that hint at, maybe a darker side to their social interactions?
Well, archaeological digs have actually turned up some scattered but, unsettling finds. Take the site of Nataruk in Kenya, for example. Researchers, they found the skeletal remains of at least 27 individuals. And a lot of them, they had these unmistakable signs of violent deaths. Skull fractures, embedded arrowheads, even shattered bones, like they were brutally clubbed. It paints a pretty grim picture, a prehistoric massacre, maybe sparked by a land dispute or a raid for resources, who knows?
That's chilling. A good reminder that, well, violence isn't exactly a modern invention. But how do we reconcile these examples of brutality with this idea we often hear about, the peaceful nature of hunter-gatherer societies?
It's important to remember that the hunter-gatherer world, it wasn't like one size fits all, just like societies today, right? There was probably a whole spectrum of social dynamics from, cooperation and peaceful coexistence all the way to competition and, even brutal conflict. The Ache people are a really interesting case study. They're a hunter-gatherer group in Paraguay, and anthropologists study them pretty extensively in the 20th century.
You mean the Ache who, if I'm remembering correctly, they practiced infanticide and they abandoned their elderly? It's tough for us to really grasp that,
Right. It does seem morally reprehensible to us, for sure. But it's really important to understand the context, right? The Anche, they lived in a harsh environment, constant pressure from predators and also, neighboring tribes. Their survival often depended on their ability to move, and move quickly, through this really dense jungle terrain.
So a child that needed constant care or an elderly person who couldn't keep up, they could put the whole group at risk.
Exactly. Their actions, while really difficult for us to condone, they were probably driven by this pragmatic, maybe even desperate need to survive.
It makes you think, though, doesn't it? What compromises might we make in the face of, some kind of existential threat? It's a question that's probably as old as humanity itself. It's a sobering thought for sure. But it also seems, I don't know, a little unfair to judge the actions of people living thousands of years ago by, well, by our modern moral standards.
I agree. We can't impose our 21st century ethics on the past, right? The Ache, just like everyone who came before them, they lived in a world that was so vastly different from our own, facing pressures and challenges that we can barely even, comprehend.
It really does make those romanticized images of hunter-gatherers, living in this perfect harmony with nature. It makes them seem, I don't know, almost naive, maybe. But amidst those harsh realities they faced, did they have space for things like art, spirituality,
Mm.
a sense of, I don't know, something bigger than themselves?
That's actually one of the most captivating aspects of their world to me. Despite that constant struggle to survive, hunter-gatherers, they still searched for meaning beyond just the material. And they expressed that search through these intricate rituals, symbolic art, and those amazing stories that they passed down through generations.
Like those incredible cave paintings, you find them all over Europe. Lascaux, Chauvet, Altamira. Those weren't just, ancient doodles on a cave wall, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
Mm.
These were deliberate acts of creation. They required so much skill, so much planning. Imagine for a second that flickering light from their torches, right? And it's illuminating these scenes of like these massive bison, these graceful horses, and then these strange enigmatic symbols. And every single stroke, it's like it's imbued with meaning. Like there's a whole story behind it, just waiting for us to decipher it.
It's like we get to, I don't know, step directly into the minds of our ancestors almost, trying to unravel all the mysteries hidden in those images. What do we know about why they created those paintings? Were they like purely decorative, or did they have a more, I don't know, a ritualistic or spiritual function?
Oh, there's so many theories. Some scholars think that these caves, they were like sacred spaces
Mm.
where shamans or, spiritual leaders, they would go into these trance-like states and they'd connect with the animal spirits that were depicted on the walls. Others, they see them as celestial maps, charting the movements of the constellations.
It's like they've left us this giant puzzle, and every brush stroke is a clue to their beliefs and, I don't know, maybe even their understanding of the entire cosmos.
Right. And we can't forget about those incredibly elaborate burial rituals. A lot of hunter-gatherer groups practice them. The Sundeer burials in Russia are a great example. They give us a little glimpse into this complex relationship they had with death and, well, maybe the afterlife, too.
Those are the ones with the children buried with, like, thousands of ivory beads, right? It's just
Yeah.
mind-boggling. What could possibly have motivated that kind of display? I mean, the effort, the artistry.
Exactly. It seems to point to this really deep-seated belief in the afterlife, doesn't it? This desire to prepare the deceased for this journey into the unknown. Those beads, they were painstakingly carved from mammoth ivory. It would have taken hundreds, if not thousands, of hours. It's a powerful testament to their reverence for life, for death, and for all those mysteries that, well, that lie beyond. It makes you wonder about all the other stories, the other expressions of their beliefs, their creativity that have just been lost to time. We're really only getting this tiny glimpse, a whisper of a world that's long gone.
That's the humbling truth, isn't it? But even those whispers, they can tell us so much. They challenge our assumptions, and they really enrich our understanding of what it means to be human, don't they?
It makes you wonder about their impact on the world around them too. We have this image a lot of times of hunter-gatherers living in this perfect harmony with nature, barely leaving a footprint. How accurate is that, really? It's an image we tend to romanticize, don't we? The noble savage living in balance, totally in tune with nature. But I think we've started to see that the reality is probably a little more, complicated. They weren't just passively wandering through some pristine wilderness, right?
Not quite. They were actively shaping their environment. Think about it. Foragers. They migrated with the seasons, right? Following resources as they shifted and changed. Plus, they used fire, and not just for warmth. They'd clear land, encourage certain plants to grow, even drive game towards better hunting grounds.
So they were like prehistoric landscape architects almost, influencing entire ecosystems.
That's a great way to put it. It's a concept researchers call anthropogenic fire regimes. Basically, it means that fires made by humans, even thousands of years ago, they've left their mark. The landscapes we see today, they carry that history. It challenges this whole idea we have about pristine wilderness, totally untouched by humans.
That's incredible. So they were wielding fire to shape their world long before we even had like bulldozers and chainsaws.
Yeah.
But you have to wonder about the consequences of that too.
You're right. There's more and more evidence suggesting that early humans, through hunting, through their use of fire, well, they played a role in the extinction of megafauna. Those incredible creatures, giant sloths, mammoths, saber-toothed cats, all gone.
So even back then, humans were capable of causing huge ecological change.
It seems we've always had a knack for it. But to be fair, their actions weren't malicious. They were driven by the same needs we all have: to survive, to thrive, to make sure there's a future for you and your family.
It makes you think about our place in all of this, doesn't it? We tend to, I don't know, see ourselves as separate from nature, but really we've been shaping it, changing it for, well, for millennia.
We carry that legacy within us, those hunter-gatherer instincts, that drive to connect with nature, the resourcefulness, that deep-seated awareness that, yeah, we're part of something much bigger.
It makes you wonder what those ancestors, what would they make of the world we've built? The concrete jungles, the digital lives, this constant striving for more of everything.
It really does. Would they envy our technology, our comfortable lives, or would they take one look at how disconnected we are from the natural world, our anxieties, our obsession with stuff? Would they pity us? Maybe.
That's something to think about, isn't it? It's like we've traded the immediacy of their world for all the complexities of our own.
Maybe. But who knows? Maybe by understanding their lives a little better, the challenges, the triumphs even.
Yeah.
Maybe we can rediscover something essential within ourselves, something ancient, something primal, and, ultimately something very human.
A connection that just might help us navigate this crazy modern world of ours. Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into the hunter-gatherer world, I hope you're left with a sense of wonder, a thirst to learn more, and maybe a little more appreciation for that wildness, the one that still lives inside all of us. Thanks for joining us.
It's been my pleasure.